Minister, today we have statements on statutory home care, and the problem is, and I think most speakers from the opposition have made that plain, is that we don't have statutory home care, and that is the issue. That what we have is a system which has been put in place, a lot of which is provided by private providers, and which for most people isn't working very well. And I have examples of that up and down the length and breadth of my constituency, and people come into my office continually where they have a relative in hospital, they want to get home from hospital, they can't get home because a home care package has been put in place but they can't recruit anybody to provide it. And that's one of the main things that we see the issue with. Now, in your opening remarks, you stated that there was additional money being put aside for that, and the people are going to get better salaries and all of that. One of the issues there is that people don't feel that they will have, if you like, the permanency of employment that they would have in other sectors. That they won't be able to go out and get a mortgage on the strength of being a home care worker. That they won't be able to go out and set out a plan for their future on the basis of being a home care worker. And that needs to change. And I think that's one of the key things that needs to happen. And I think that can only change if you have a proper statutory home care service, which is provided by the state and stood over by the state. And that's what you don't do, and what you seem to be moving away from. And in the end of your remarks, you said how there was a whole lot of disagreement, and some people wanted this, and some people wanted that, and some people wanted that. We don't care what some people want. What we need is a service that's provided for people, and the government has the responsibility to make up their mind as to what that service is going to look like, and the government has the responsibility to deliver that service. We have waited years and years and years, and coming in here at the 11th hour, when this government is near the end of its term, and saying, well, people don't really know what they want. That's not an answer. That's not appropriate for a government that has been in office for 4.5 years. It simply isn't, and isn't good enough. I continually come across people who are in very difficult circumstances and who have an elderly relative, perhaps with dementia or with other issues, and indeed the people advocating on behalf of dementia services were over in Buzzwells earlier today. I'm sure I've seen you over there yourself. And many of them, when they have issues with home care service, they discover that they're getting, a half an hour 3 times a day, and not at the weekends. And they will need to get some help at the weekends. And what are the family told? Oh, you'll have to hire that in yourself. You have to pay for that yourself, And the previous speakers talked about how families shouldn't be put a burden on them to pay for it themselves and pay taxes all their lives. Well, that's exactly what they're being told to do right now by the HSE providers of home care services. If you want more hours, go pay for them yourself. That's what they've been told. Because the service is already there, because it has been privatised and a private company is providing that service, and go to them and hire in the extra hours. That's simply not appropriate either. We also, of course, have very, very many people out there who have chronic disabilities and who maybe are not very old in life, are perhaps in middle age, they have multiple sclerosis, they have various conditions. Again, serious problems to try to get assistance from them and try to get packages put in place for them, because it comes up to the same thing again: they can't recruit staff. That's what we hear all the time from all the providers, whether the providers in the public sector or the providers in the private sector. They can't recruit staff, and they find that one section is stealing the staff off the other. When the ones in the private sector sometimes get staff and train them up and have them working for them, the next thing is they discover that they're being hired by the HSE and they can't get them back, and we have this crisscrossing over and back, and that's all down to the same problem. The problem is that we don't have a proper service which is uniform, which you can stand over, which is what was promised and which the government has promised for a very long time, is a statutory home care service. There was much mention made of nursing homes, and the difficulty keeping people out of nursing. And absolutely, people should be provided services for as long as absolutely possible in their own home. But I do want to say, in my experience, and I've dealt with many of them, the services that are provided in many of our nursing homes are second to none. And people are very, very well looked after. And I think that needs to be said as well. It's not always a bad experience. Often it's a good experience, whether they're in the public one or in the private one. They are often very, very well looked after. That needs to be acknowledged. That said, people don't, the vast majority, particularly of older people, don't want to be in a nursing home. They want to be at home. They want to be with their family. They want to be with friends calling into them. They want to have the service to do that. And the cost on the state of providing adequate home care service for them to be able to do that is a fraction of what the cost is to pay for people for long-term care in a nursing home. And we recognise that. So this is one of these situations where, adequate investment at the early stages in the correct service to provide home care will save money in the long term to the state, by keeping people out of the long-term care services in nursing homes. I also want to mention the mainly women, it has to be said, who provide the home care services and who are the heroes in all of this. and who often go far and beyond what are required from them from the point of view of what they're paid for. Some of them, they get a half an hour with somebody and they sit for another hour and have a cup of tea and talk to that person and become a friend to them as much as a service provider for them. And I think they need to be acknowledged, the huge work they do. But ultimately, Minister, and I finish now, I recognise my time is up, Concordia. The problem we have here is that we have statements on something which your government has absolutely failed to provide, and that's where you need to step up to the mark.